Do you remember your first quilt? And looking back at it now, you think, wow, I've come so far. Well, today I'm going to be sharing how quilting basics to help you achieve permanent weight loss. This is episode 248, Love Yourself Thin. I'm Dara Tomasson, professional quilter turned life coach, where I help women see that all of that wasted time, energy on traditional diets will always end in disaster. And in fact, we all know how to lose weight, but keeping it off is a whole other story. And that's where I step in, and I'm so glad you're here joining us. Now, I want to talk about what are the basics of making a quilt. So I am a self-taught quilter. In fact, I was one of those kids, and I have this embarrassing story. When I was probably 7, I went to my grandma's and I asked her to teach me how to knit. And I said, "Grandma, teach me how to knit." I'm so excited. So I'm sitting beside my grandma and she's showing me what to do. And I look at her and I say, "Grandma, you're doing it wrong." And she looks at me and she's like, "You don't know how to knit." I said, "But that doesn't look how my friend Louise Corbett's mom does it." My grandma just started to laugh because here I am asking her to teach me, but I kind of knew what was going on. So I want to just look at when we have the basics. I didn't have the basics of knitting, and all I needed was her to help me figure out in my head what the basics were. And when I learned them, everything could fall into place. So let's think about quilting. What are the essentials, would you say? We need a 1/4-inch seam. That's going to be really helpful. You don't have to have a rotary cutter, but it's helpful. Rulers are really helpful. Pressing rules will make a huge difference. Squaring up your block. Also, having a good quality sewing machine. Having a well-kept sewing machine, so oiled, taken care of. Lint is a huge problem when we're piecing. And if we don't take care of the lint, then it can actually completely stop our machine. And having a good power source. So if you were to write down what were the essentials, just what would they be? So as I was thinking about this topic, especially as the Quilters Life Summit is coming up next week, if you're listening to this as it comes out, we're going to have lots of different quilt instructors, and they're all going to be teaching different techniques. So there's lots of different ways of doing things. And once you get the basics, you can do anything. I haven't learned the basics of sewing curves. I've watched videos, but I haven't given myself the opportunity and time to really dive into figuring that out. If you want to expand your quilting abilities, you would come to the Quilters Life Summit. You would come to the classes. And if you really want to learn those strategies and tools, then you have to be willing to be uncomfortable. Just like with free motion quilting, I had to really understand what the basics were, how machine worked, the feed dogs, all of that, and then what were the basic designs that I was going to give me confidence. And then as I built on that, I was able to do incredible, beautiful things. You can check out my books. I will link them in the show notes. The first book is the 10 Basic Steps. And the second book is all about doodling and how to find your own voice with that. Let's go into permanent weight loss. One of the things that I love to do with my clients is help them see that if you wanted to be a ballerina, you wouldn't take pilot lessons. Or if you wanted to be a construction worker, you wouldn't take ballet lessons. If you want to lose weight, restrictive dieting is not the way to help you. The most important thing you need to do is understand how your brain is wired as a child and the program that's in there. Then you can go in and reprogram it. Just like with any sort of computer program, you put something in and something comes out. I did a training today and I said, if weight loss was a math formula, we'd all be skinny. Like if it was just as simple as putting in, I do this and I do that, and then I get this result, then there would be no problems. There'd be no questions. The reason that doesn't work is because we have wired childhood behaviors and ways of dealing with things We just use food as one of those acceptable buffers, and we don't know how to feel our feelings. So we're just eating more than we need. Let me break this down for you and look at some basics, because just like with the free motion quilting or any new skill you want to learn, you got to go into the basics. This is the first basic. I was thinking about a 1/4 inch seam. The more accurate your seam is, the better. Also, the least amount of trimming you have to do. When you get really good at pressing your fabric and starching your fabric, you're a lot more efficient. If you just spend 1 or 2 minutes scrolling on Instagram or doing a Google search or AI search on weight loss, you are completely inundated these days. The problem is, depending on who you're talking to, and this is the other part that's really challenging, is that there are doctors. There are so many different doctors that have so many different opinions, and they're all experts. Then who do you believe? As we focus on the basics, it's going to help you make better connections. Today, I thought I would teach you a little bit about how the body actually works and why. So let's go back to history. When the world began, every living organism needs energy. Mitochondria converts food into energy, and then ATP stores it. Now, when we were evolving, we learned how to make fire. And what fire did was it helped us to cook meat. It made it easier to eat, chew, swallow, and digest. Gorillas and other large animals have much longer intestines because it took much longer for them to digest their food. So because we were able to be more efficient with our fuel source, our brains grew bigger, and we were able to start creating a more sophisticated negative feedback loop, which helped us with survival. And so there's a sensor and there's a switch. For example, the kidney is a sensor, and it regulates hydration through 2 switches: thirst and urine production. This negative feedback system is energy storage and consumption. Just like with animals, zebras, giraffes, any animal, they're not obese because they have, and we have it too, it's called leptin. Leptin is our fuel storage hormone, and it communicates with the brain and says, we've had enough. Now, if we are overeating and eating food that is destroying and dulling that feedback loop, then that's why we're having obesity. Dr. Andrew Jenkinson also put in the show notes. He wrote 2 really interesting books, and he works with bariatric patients. So really understanding, like, how are these smart, capable humans coming and struggling so much with weight loss? So he really wanted to take a look at why obesity is such a huge problem. It's a Western problem. Why is that happening? He looks at, we are overloading this system of saying we've had too much. So we don't have these overweight zebras, but we have these overweight humans. So what's happening? He looks at the type of food we're eating. In our past, we would eat starchy tubers, vegetables, fruits, nuts, herbs. And now what are we eating? Refined sugars, less natural fat, refined oils make our metabolism is overworking. Our metabolism wants us to have 2 months worth of stored fat. But now we're having 6, 12 months of stored fat. And the problem is we are hungry. So we can have 12 months of stored fat. You need approximately 1,200 calories a day, and there's 3,000 calories per pound of fat. So we are obese, but yet we're not having that signal that says that we're okay. So this leptin is not able to do its job. So we have what's called now leptin sensitivity, just like we have insulin sensitivity. There is a study done by Ethan Sims in 1976 where he was overfeeding inmates, and he increased their metabolic rate by 10%. We all have a natural set point that our body wants to be at. For example, if we go on holidays or have the Christmas holidays and gain 10 pounds, if we just go back to our regular eating, we'll lose that weight in about a month or so, and it's not a big deal. Another study was done by Ansel Keys in 1944, where the people in the study had a severe reduction in calories, which caused a 50% decrease in their metabolic rate, leading to weight gain once normal eating resumes. You can also think about if you start running and start doing something that involves a lot of energy, the body will say, we need to slow down the metabolic rate here because this person, she's using a lot of energy and we're not sure if we're going to get as much energy coming back. So we want to slow things down. So why do I share this? What is this going to do for you? If we keep going in these yo-yo diet way of restrict, and then we get the weight off and go back to our normal eating, we are not only going to continue with obesity, but we're ruining our metabolism. Think about your 1/4 inch seam. If you're not following that rule, your blocks are going to be haphazard. They're not going to lay flat. As a former long arm quilter, it was a disaster. Some quilts, I'm like, I don't know if I can quilt this. We might just have to tie it. It is not flat. It will not go nicely here. So I want you to think about, what does this mean for you in your life? What has been your experience? Part of the formula is that back in the 1970s, our government said we need to cut out fats and increase like vegetable oils, which are the omega-6s, which now dull our leptin feedback system. We also were told to eat more wheat and refined foods. These cigarette companies start making snack foods, highly addictive foods. In fact, Dr. Andrew calls them designer foods with bright, shiny colors and all these promises. So how is that going for us? And what is that doing for us? We are making ourselves more fat and unhealthy than ever. And it's really causing huge problems because we are more obese than ever. So if you don't clean out the foods that you're eating, your insulin, which is your power source, your leptin, which is the feedback system that tells your body if you've had enough fuel, and your ghrelin, which is your hormone that tells your body when you're actually hungry. So if you don't clean out your lint, it gets compacted. And think about our systems. They're slow, they're sluggish, they're coated with vegetable oils, they're backlogged with all these chemicals that we don't even know how to pronounce. So how is it possible for us to have success if we can't even run, just like with the lint, or like a sharper needle? Another thought I had was the power surge. If we're sewing and there's electrical, like a lightning or something, and there's that electrical surge, it could burn out the systems. There's a great quote that says, it's not the calories in the food, it's the food in the calories that's killing us. What he means by that is, because we're eating so much processed food, if the food is bad, those calories are not good for us. They don't have all the vitamins, minerals, and the nutrients. That energy source is not going to help us. So think about how we are being burned out and how we're being exhausted. The last comparison I was thinking about was this: if our machine if we don't have good maintenance, if we're not oiling it, if we're beating it around, if we're not storing it properly. My sister borrowed my sewing machine years ago, left it in the back of her van. It got bumped around, alignment got off, and it was ruined. And so if we are not taking care of our mental health and our physical health, we all have mental health because we all have a brain. So if we're not taking care of ourselves, if we're not sleeping well, if we're not managing our stress, if we're not having good boundaries with relationships, and we're doing everything for everyone else and we're exhausting ourselves, then that machine will not be able to perform properly. Okay? The last thing I wanted to say was we sew because it's a fun and creative outlet. It's a way for us to show love to others by creating something for them. My friend went through a divorce, and I just thought it would be so amazing for her to have her own big girl quilt since she's no longer with her husband. And, it was just such a wonderful gift that I could give her. And every time she uses that quilt, she could think about our friendship and think about how much I love her. My sisters, most of my brothers have quilts that I made. I still have one brother. I need to make him a quilt. So every time they use that quilt, they think, oh, my sister loves me, right? So I wonder what it would be like for you to think about yourself, your self-care. We eat to help us be creative. We eat so that we can have more fun. We move our body and we work through those problems so that we can stop the dependency on numbing out with food so that we can truly live a life that feels amazing and wonderful. Recently, I was at my son's basketball game and his coach's niece was there. And at the time she was like 20 months. And she's one of those like really chunky babies. She was 10 months. I offered to take her while he was coaching and his wife was there and she had these other kids she was taking care of. And I was like, oh, I'm good. I can take care of her. You know, those babies that like when they fight really hard and you're like, nope, yeah, you know that they're fighting the sleep. So you just have to hold them a little bit tighter. And then I just snuggle in and they're like, yeah, I feel secure. I feel safe. I can go to sleep now. So I had to really get her in my arms and walking around. And it just felt so nice to hold a baby. I have 5 of my own kids. I was probably holding her for about an hour and a half. We drove home. It was an hour and a half drive. My arms were throbbing. The next morning, my arms were throbbing. And I thought, wow, I used to be able to do this for hours. My arms were not throbbing. And so I've really had this awareness of I am 52. I need to build muscle and I want to be the grandma. I want to be the woman that can be that strong person. That's part of my identity. I'm 6 feet tall. And so I've been pushing myself because it's not very comfortable to go. We have a gym downstairs in our garage. Every time I do it, I say, I'm doing this for my future self. I'm doing this so that I can love who I'm going to be as a grandma. My youngest is 13. I'm 52. So I could be having grandkids for the next 30 years, possibly. I want to be in such good shape that I can do all the things that I want. This is why I call my membership Love Yourself Thin. Love yourself strong, happy, calm, satisfied, assured. All of those things, but they require you to take care of you. We need to have these appropriate guidelines like a 1/4-inch seam, really good pressing tools. We need to take care of our sewing machine. We need to make sure it's well oiled and protection of the electricity so it doesn't fry the motherboard. Some of these machines are really expensive. I have a long arm. It's more expensive than both of our cars. That lint, that pile up of all those little choices. We do it because we want to have joy. We don't want to lose weight because we have to feel like we need to be more worthy. Our worth is already set. I am so thrilled to be sharing this with you. Dr. Andrew Jenkinson, with the work he's done with bariatric patients. And one of the things that I love about his approach is that it's very common sense. The more we complicate things, the more overwhelmed we become and the less action we take. So let's not overwhelm things. Let's really focus. You can go to my Instagram. I have a whole series on common sense weight loss. We're making things more complicated than they need to be, and they don't need to be. I can't wait to see you at the Quilters Life Summit. Also, as a reminder, in the summit, I'm going to be teaching about perfectionism, people pleasing, and procrastination, which were strategies to survive in our tribe. So it's wired deep down in our childhood, and the more we can understand what's really going on, the more free we can be with weight loss, mental and physical. All right, take care, everyone. Bye.